Redditors who have eaten at the Times Square Olive Garden, why?
I grew up in New Jersey and, despite living in Queens and working in Manhattan, near Public Library, for 40 years, the Olive Garden was always my grandma's favorite restaurant. In high school 2001 to 2005, I would take the bus into the city to see her once every month or two. We'd get lunch and see a show or go to a museum. Almost every single time, we met at the Times Square Olive Garden. Honestly, salad and breadsticks aren't bad. Though there were a million other restaurants I'd rather have eaten as a 15 to 18-year-old. Went to college in NYC during Hurricane Sandy. With the power out for a few days after, my roommates and I went out looking for food and electricity. Midtown still had power. We convinced ourselves that the Times Square Olive Garden was a better option than fighting for outlets in an ATM vestibule. $25 for 4 hours of charging my phone, unlimited breadsticks, and drinks. Marginally worth it. 3/5 would do it again next hurricane.
I was on a school trip and I'm assuming it was the cheapest option for 100 kids to eat.
I've only been to New York once, and I ate at Applebee's. The family friend who offered to show us around, Red, invited herself on our vacation, insisted, all the while bragging because it was the world's biggest Applebee's. Definitely, one of the worst trips of my life. Me and my boyfriend went to the Guy Fieri's bar by Times Square last time I was in NYC. For a few reasons. They show diners, drive-ins and dives in the UK and we wanted to get a picture by the Flavor Town sign. B, we were waiting for an ill-advised transfer to Newark and wanted a pint. C, we'd been to lots of great craft beer places already and wanted a cheesy, touristy experience. I love NYC and have been to lots of authentic places, but we have those in London too. Sometimes you want to go to the flashy tourist places because they're unique to the city too. I've been to the Red Lobster in Times Square too. We don't have Red Lobsters or Olive Gardens in the UK, of course they're not great seafood or Italian restaurants, but I can go to one of those in London. Literally ate there yesterday. It's super weird to see this post. The best I can say is desperation. My girlfriend and I had never been to New York before, so we spent the whole day seeing the city. Skipped lunch, so by 9:30 when we walked by it we were starving. The smell lured us in and there you go. I think the other part of it was due to our lack of experience in New York. My girlfriend and I have never been to New York, don't know anything about New York, and were alone without someone who knows anything about eating in New York. Given that, we had no idea how to pick between the million hole-in-the-wall places to eat in New York. May as well go with something we know we sort of like. I think that location is preying on people with this mindset, hence why it's situated in the middle of a tourist hotspot like Times Square. They got us. Edit, for everyone offering suggestions, thank you. I'll to visit as many as I can next time I'm in New York. For everyone wondering why we didn't Google somewhere, I should add that we both like Olive Garden well enough, we weren't really opposed to eating there. We were also hungry enough that eating there sounded more appealing than walking 10 minutes somewhere else. We mostly planned our trip around all the stuff we wanted to see, food was secondary, so we usually just stopped and ate the nearest thing when we got hungry enough. If it's any consolation, the next day we did eat brunch at a local cafe where I had a great Belgian waffle and a true hole-in-the-wall Italian place with much better food than Olive Garden, at a better price to boot. Breadsticks.
Got that fuck money.
Nobody knows the actual answer. Because the Olive Garden on 21st Street closed.
Not Olive Garden but the TGI Fridays. I arrived in Times Square a few years back kinda late and was waiting for a friend to get back to me. It was about December or so and was absolutely brutal out, and that's where I decided to go in and grab a pint. Bartender ended up being a friendly enough dude, and now I stop in every time I happen to go to the city and chat with him and catch up. I had just gotten out of a relationship and was thinking about moving across state. I ended up staying in my city, but I stopped in about a year after the first time I went in to see if he was working, and when I walked in the door and saw him he said, "I thought you were moving?" He earned my loyalty.
I can answer this one. In 2008, I was sent to NYC to attend a management training class near Times Square. I was very junior, entry level, and I think that my boss really just wanted to let me go on the trip as a perk. Anyway, we had a variety of people in our class from other companies who wanted to go out to lunch. Olive Garden is relatively cheap and could seat a large group. We did the never-ending soup salad and breadsticks lunch. At the time, I thought it was good. However, I've since realized that I had a corporate card and could have had a much better meal.
I know this guy who gloats about how he is Mr. Sophisticated. So I was on a business trip with him to Louisiana and we saw an Olive Garden. His jaw dropped and he proclaimed, "The only other Olive Garden I've been to is in Times Square, New York City." And he made us go there thinking it was the only other Olive Garden in existence.
Because they have a lunch special which is $7.99 that includes salad, breadsticks, and cheesy pasta. It's way better and cheaper than Subway as an example. Haters gonna hate.
Because my wife.
Honestly, because I missed Olive Garden's food. I know it isn't good Italian, but it's something. I grew up in Ohio, went to school in Michigan, and Olive Garden was sort of the place I would go whenever I wanted something lazy classy. It usually had decent service, I liked their mushroom dish, and it didn't kill my wallet. So, after spending like 4 years in New York and eating some amazing Italian food throughout that time, I just kind of missed it. So I went. I ate. I paid. And I left. Wasn't bad. I was happy I did it. Good service. Same food. We'll probably go back in another 4 years.
We felt like going for the salad, the service there was excellent. 10 out of 10 would go there to have my credit card info stolen again.
Lol. Because my kids were being tired jerks after a day of sightseeing and it didn't have a 90-minute wait. We were all disappointed in our meals though, and I felt remorse for taking the easy way out.
Because when you're there, your family.
My friend and her family were visiting the city and going to a Broadway show and lunch and invited me to join them. When I heard they decided on and were excited about Olive Garden, I was too nice to tell them what a horrible idea it was. But hey, free lunch.
I pooped in there once. It felt like Ocarina of Time trying to dodge all the people that would kick me out because you aren't supposed to poop in there unless you are eating there. They are very explicit about this. But I was sneaky, and I succeeded. I pooped. I know this doesn't answer your question, but I've never told anyone I've pooped in there before and I needed at least one person to know.
I've done similar, like Pizza Hut in Paris. Sometimes you don't want to shop around, and you know exactly what's on the menu and what to expect.
I am from Japan and want to experience your diabetic American culture.
The Sbarro at Times Square is the best pizza in NY though.
I ate at the TGIF in Times Square at a friend's request. I wasn't pleased. His logic applies though, he wanted to see how the experience would be different in a massive city's iconic area. Kind of like going to McDonald's when you go to Asia, or whatever. The result? Exactly the same, but busier and more expensive, and more disappointing as it meant we missed eating at some other local place instead. I ate at the TGI Fridays in Times Square once. I was on my own and ate at the bar. I ended up there after wandering the city all day after having recently moved there. It was good and loud and I didn't feel bad about being on my own, so it was alright.
I'm dying at how stupidly simple and funny this is.
As a non-American, these comments are funny, but I am totally lost. Edit, rip my inbox.
My mom insisted on it. I had the mushroom ravioli and I put a bunch of breadsticks in my backpack to snack on later.
My dad, though now very wealthy, was raised with nothing. As such, he thinks that upscale chains like Red Lobster, Cheesecake Factory, and Olive Garden are fancy. Our first family trip to NYC, he wanted to really knock our socks off with the finest opulence he could think of dinner at the Times Square of.
Tourist. Jet-lagged. Hungry. Overexcited about being in NY. Slightly intimidated by the whole thing. Really hungry.
Sometimes when you're immersed in something different for long enough, you just want something familiar.
My friend and I are from the UK, we had never been to an Olive Garden, and we were hungry at a slightly weird time of day. The portions were as huge as we had heard. Happy? Exclamation mark.
I have a buddy who goes there when he is breaking up with someone. He doesn't want to ruin any other restaurants.
Because we were fucking hungry and that was the only place we could eat that didn't require reservation or 2:30h of waiting time for a table. This was back in 2007. They charged us 15% tips without us having any say in it. Party of 3. Worst meal ever.
Exclamation mark.
Friend's birthday. I ordered the chicken Alfredo. I shit you fucking not, they brought me plain noodles. When I asked where the chicken and cheese was, they said it was coming. Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark dot. 10 minutes later they brought me chicken. Still no cheese. To this day I have not received it.
I'm out of the loop here. What's the deal with Times Square Olive Garden? Context: I live in the South.
Couldn't get a res at Dorsha. Kids. The answer is 100% kids. Every other restaurant is a crapshoot. At Olive Garden you know you can order your kids some spaghetti that they'll enjoy, and it'll shut them up for an hour.
My sister has literally no taste for good food. None. Her ideal dinner out is Harvey's or Swiss Chalet. When we visited NYC, we were passing through Times Square on our first night when she spots Olive Garden and basically squeals. Since we were all tired and hungry, we gave in. She thought the food was so good, and she ordered a glass of wine and everything, whereas I picked at a ravioli that tasted like a microwave dinner and vowed to never let her choose the restaurant ever again.
Isn't Times Square super commercialized? Are there non-chain restaurants?
Night 2008 tickets. Me and So were in NY for a week. Obviously wanted to see the ball drop bit, didn't want to spend an entire day freezing in the street sections. Got tickets to Olive Garden. The food was fine and there was an open bar of top shelf spirits. Basically, open bar. Edit, wow. I go to sleep for a few hours and this has gone a bit mad. To answer some of the questions. I think anyone as a tourist will want to have a quintessential experience. As a Brit-Irish pair we were cramming in as much to the trip as we could. The tickets were for the OG meal and drinks on night. It got us access to all of the closed streets getting to Times Square. We got to see the ball drop but were warm and had access to a toilet. Jets game was vs. Miami Dolphins. I have no idea who won, but the experience was fun. Except the getting back into Manhattan part.
I can think of one good reason to eat there. If you have a reservation there on New Year's Eve you are allowed through the barricades to access the restaurant. Basically, you can party in Times Square for New Year's without having to spend the whole day there camping.
Consider subscribing.